earthquake when I was in 7th grade, and I was living in Seattle, earthquakes are pretty common there, and we all had to get under our desks. And a number of the kids in my class thought that the world was shaking because of a nuclear explosion. It was very much on the front of people's minds. More in a more sort of contemporary sense, nuclear weapons, though we don't have superpowers facing off, who among us is confident that a nuclear weapon will never fall into the wrong hands, which is to say, the hands of those prepared to use it, regardless of the cost? I love this movie, The Fog of War. It's a long interview with Robert McNamara, and he talks about meeting Fidel Castro many years after the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it turns out that there were nuclear warheads in Cuba. And McNamara says to Fidel Castro, do you mean that you would have recommended to Khrushchev that he use those weapons against the United States, knowing that it would have meant the total destruction of Cuba? And he says, Mr. McNamara, not only would I did. I did recommend that. So, I mean, just put that in your pipe and smoke it. In terms of, there is something at work where this, where violence and principle and anger and I don't know all the feelings that are involved, but Fidel Castro was willing to annihilate his own people. Why? And I can't answer that question. But I know that impulse exists. So nuclear, we still live under that nuclear cloud. I haven't said much about climate change, but I'm watching as temperatures at the North Pole are 30 degrees above normal for this time of year. It's it's polar winter. There is no sun, and it's about as warm as it is here, which again is worrisome. And then you might think that sort of extinction level events like the asteroid that hit Earth and caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. Bill Bryson, the popularizer of science, says we underestimate that danger. The Earth, given how trafficky celestial spaces are, the Earth is sort of like a toddler wandering around on the Los Angeles freeway. There's a lot of stuff around, and getting hit by stuff is not that difficult to imagine. So we still live under significant threat of something happening to us that would make our planet uninhabitable. And then, of course, we're faced with just time itself. Earth is mortal. The sun is mortal. All galaxies are mortal. That cartoon I like so much about the guy running through the streets saying, the sun is burning out, the sun is burning out. And the guy goes, yeah, but that's not for 6 billion years. He goes, oh, I thought it was 6 million years. All things are mortal, all creatures, and in that old sort of language of theology, everything that has been made is a creature and is thus mortal. And so Advent confronts us with what kind of future do we think we have? And of course, I hope I've been saving the best for last. What kind of future do we have? I've got to get my glasses, sorry. Let's see, I need my glasses to find my glasses.
Welcome to the club.
Sort of an infinite loop. The future that Isaiah holds up. He shall judge between the nations and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. This is an alternate future that comes from about 3,000 years ago. An alternate future, not quite that long, but an alternate future that actually holds out the possibility of peace. And two things about that. One, wherever the dream has appeared in our human history, it has almost always been attached to some human agency. Like the Roman Catholic Church is going to impose a holy empire, supposedly, ostensibly of God. Or, in our own contemporary world, that's the dream of the caliphate. An actual physical society governed by tangible laws. And I need to say, what Isaiah is talking about is not that. It is about people doing what Paul says. Now is the time to wake up. Now is the time to become conscious and not act out of your most unconscious places, which what the works of darkness are, but act out of a place where you've become conscious and you see and you're making conscious choices. So, there's that. And then this idea of beating our spears into pruning hooks. Anything can be both a tool or a weapon. If you're in an intimate relationship, you can use what you understand about that other person, both for constructive intimacy, and you can use it as a weapon against them. At the personal level, at every level, who we are and the gifts and the abilities that have been given to us can be used as both a tool and a weapon. And if we want to sort of begin to embrace that vision of Isaiah, that is not top down, but it is all people waking up and sharing that illumination. If we want to share the vision of Isaiah, we had better get very savvy about the relationship between weapons and tools, and ask ourselves, am I using the resources of my life as a tool, productive tool, to bring forth that which will nourish us? Beat your swords into pruning hooks. I wish I should get this imagery down. Swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks, and not study war anymore. It's a possible future. It gets almost no support. And it gets almost no support even from the Christian world. The Christian world predominantly is in love with an avenging Jesus. And that is not the Jesus that was filled with the Spirit of God. That is, do we take it as a general rule that almost everything that is said about God is wrong? And I don't mean that flippantly. Just when human beings talk about God, God functions as this Rorschach in the sky, and we just project all our fantasies. So this violent fantasy of Jesus slaughtering all the enemy, that's a human fantasy. That's just a human fantasy. And can we retreat from our human fantasies and get very humble and maybe even silent about who God is, and take our clues from that which seems least like human beings, which, as Isaiah also points out, has to do with the capacity to love and forgive and ease traumatic situations by an inrush of compassion. That's the way that God is different from us, whose ways are not our ways. What kind of future do we have? Is it a future of conflagrational violence and extinction, or are we really holding in our hearts the vision that Isaiah held out to us? A vision where our real human abilities will be used productively and not violently, and there's a real possibility of peace and reconciliation among us. Which future are you working